Welcome to the 3Q Practitioner training course. The structure of the course has 3 semesters. So semester 1 is devoted to 3Q methodology, and that's made up of 4 sessions per week for 1 month, 3 recorded sessions, and 1 session live. Semester 2 has the same structure. The focus of semester 2 is on the course material that uses 3Q methodology. These are the courses you'll be trained to deliver. So that has a similar structure to semester 1, 4 sessions per week for 1 month, 3 sessions are recorded, and 1 session is live. Now semester 3 has a different structure. It has 1 live session per week for 1 month, plus private study. This is the study of background material, which will give you a context to understand 3Q in relation to the psychology and the history of spirituality. Then at the end of the course there's certification. So the course is a 3-month course, and by the end of the 3rd month you will then be eligible to be certified. Now the certification process has these components: a written knowledge test. You'll be given 20 questions to answer in writing in your own time. There's an audition, so it's a brief presentation online. That's just a presentation that you can give privately. It's not broadcast. It's simply an audition that will be listened to privately, so that you can demonstrate your ability to make presentations. And then the final component of certification is a question and answer session where you'll be asked questions about 3Q, and you can reply in real time online to those questions. So the sort of questions that you'll be asked are questions that typically anyone will ask when they're doing one of your courses. So this is just to ensure you've got the necessary background knowledge to actually answer questions. Now, of course, there'll be some questions which you won't know the answer to, because this is a vast subject area. And of course, it's perfectly acceptable to say, look, I'm not sure about the answer to that question, but I'll get back to you. So there'll be occasions when you'll need to say that. So, in a 3-month course, we're not expecting that you'll be able to have an encyclopedic knowledge of this whole area of psychology and spirituality. However, you do need some basic background knowledge, and so you'll need to be able to answer some basic questions that can be expected, and that's what semester 3 is devoted to. And also the question and answer session in the certification is tests you on that knowledge. So let's look now at the actual aims of the course. Now the aims of the course, we're aiming to, basically we have a dual aim. One is to train and certify practitioners to deliver 3Q courses, and the other aims are more to do with social and cultural evolution. So we have an eye to the general evolution of society via training people in 3Q methodology. So certification we've just covered earlier, so that occurs at the end of the course. I'll give you more details about that as we get into semester 3. And the additional resources you'll have on the course are a manual, which I'll send to you after this session, the 3Q Practitioner Manual, the introduction to the SQ paradigm on the SQ website,
And there's also a reading list that you'll have. It's in the back of the manual, which is a guide to additional reading. So the course material that we cover on these live events is only part of the course. Further reading is required to actually complete the necessary background knowledge for this course. So there's 3 levels of training. Level 1, which you're doing now, there's the senior level, and then there's the master level. So these different levels will equip you to deliver different courses. So the level you're doing now will equip you to deliver 3Q life skills for students, 3Q teacher for school teachers, 3Q workplace for employees, 3Q couple for the public. It's initially a 1-day course, but it's actually been expanded to a 2.5-day course now for the public. So it's like Friday evening, Saturday and Sunday. And 10-second meditation is also a public course. It's a 2.5-day course. So they're for the public. So those courses you'll be equipped to deliver once you're certified as a 3Q practitioner. Now, if you go on to train at the senior level, you'll also be trained to deliver 3Q management, 3Q leadership, 3Q startups, 3Q SMEs, the 3Q couple intensive, which is the same as the 3Q couple, is just a longer one, goes for 4 days. And the 10-second meditation intensive, again, it's a longer version, goes for 4 days. And the master level, you also will be trained to deliver 3Q organizational development. That's a much later program. Now, the core material in the courses can be subdivided into these 10 core life skills: self-awareness, purpose, problem to solution, critical thinking, creative thinking, decision-making, coping with emotions, coping with stress, interpersonal skills, and effective communication. So we apply 3Q methodology to all these skills, and these are the skills that we teach in our courses. And obviously we target the training according to who we're teaching. If we're teaching students, the material, of course, is different. The examples are different and so on, compared to if we're teaching managers and so on. But these are the basic elements common to all the courses. So we teach these life skills and work skills to people, and we teach them how to use 3Q in association with all these life skills so that they actually get better at these life skills. Now, the common components of all 3Q courses. There's a psychometric test before and after every course. Every course introduces 3Q methodology and the 10 core life skills. Sometimes we call them different things. We call the life skills different things depending on the course. There's also, every course has an 18-hour development stage, which is a workshop, and with workbook exercises. So the 18 hours can be subdivided in any way you like. You could do 3 days of, 6 hours a day, one day after another. Or you could do, you could do 1 hour a day for 18 days, or you could do 1 hour a week for 18 weeks. It just depends who your clients are as to what works for them in terms of delivery, right? But however you divide it, it's an 18-hour workshop, is the basic core of every course that you'll be teaching. And as you can see here, point number 4, it's followed by a 6-month integration stage, which is 1 hour a week on Google+. Now, this 1 hour a week is in order that the people that you train actually develop the 3Q skill, because if they just do your 18-hour workshop, it's quite likely that if that's the only input they have, they're probably going to forget about what you've taught them to do. And after a month or two, they'll have forgotten all about it. So we give them a 6-month integration course at the end of the 18-hour development stage, 1 hour a week for 6 months. This is to embed the 3Q capability. not just as a habit, but as actually a brain network. They're developing their brain the more they use the 3Q methodology. So we want to make sure that they actually change their life as a result of learning 3Q. We don't want 3Q just to be another program they do and then after a month or two they've forgotten all about it. We want to make sure that it actually is life-changing. So that's the reason for the 6-month integration stage. Now, any questions on that? I'm just going to throw it open. Eve, I know you're already familiar with the course material. You've already done a couple of courses with us. But Marcio, you may have some questions. Eve, you may also have questions because the course material has changed somewhat since you did it last. So any questions at this stage? You can just type in the chat box if you have a question, and then I'll unmute your microphone. Good, Marcio has no questions. Looks like Eve doesn't have any either. Although I know, Eve, you may have difficulty talking at this point. It depends if you've managed to get a suitable space to join in the webinar. We are expecting other members, but because of the mix-up with the logins, they may have been unable to join us at this stage. So we'll just continue, even though they're not here. So let's just briefly go over the basics of 3Q methodology. Now, this is something I'm sure that everyone's familiar with already. Because you've probably had a look at the website, you've probably listened to a couple of videos, so you probably know this material. But anyway, we're going to go through it because this is the material you'll be using to introduce to your clients. And so if we go over that a few times, well, all the better, because it'll help you embed it more clearly in your understanding. So even though you may be familiar with this, hopefully you will be happy to review this information because it'll be helpful to you when you actually set out to train other people. So whole brain training. Number one, 3Q training employs 3 principal dimensions of intelligence which activate the whole brain. 2. Both IQ and EQ are important, but they're not enough to maintain top performance and provide enduring fulfillment. In addition to IQ and EQ, the next level of intelligence is also necessary, SQ or spiritual intelligence. So IQ and EQ are about thought and emotion, and SQ is about meaning and purpose. So as you see here, IQ plus EQ plus SQ is 3Q. 3Q training unlocks full human potential, increases personal fulfillment, and results in high performance. Now this diagram you're familiar with, the left brain and the right brain, rational, logical operations in the left brain. In the right brain we have imagination, non-verbal feelings, and so on. But when you actually integrate these 2 hemispheres, you get a further dimension of intelligence called whole brain intelligence, or SQ, spiritual intelligence, which has additional capabilities which exceed the sum of IQ and EQ capabilities. And the scientific foundations of spiritual intelligence are summarized as in this diagram here. There's an article which you might like to read if you haven't read it, called The Psychology of Spiritual Intelligence. I'm going to put it in the chat box here. Now this article summarizes these 4 different forms of scientific validation for the 3Q paradigm. The psychology of spiritual intelligence. So I'd encourage, if you haven't read this article, I'd encourage you to read this if you can before tomorrow, because we're going to go into some detail on this. So as you can see, we've got 4 branches of psychology here: cognitive, transpersonal, psychoanalysis, and neuroscience. As you can see, cognitive is the study of the mind, and transpersonal is the study of consciousness. Some might say, well, what's the difference? Surely the mind is what's conscious, so why aren't they both the same? Well, that's the crux of the whole 3Q distinction, isn't it? Because in fact, the mind is not the same as consciousness. The mind is a function within consciousness. Consciousness extends beyond the mind. For example, as I'm sure you know, the subject pole of attention is not in the mind. The subject pole of attention, awareness itself, is a capability or a dimension which includes the mind, but goes beyond the mind, as we're going to experience very soon. So these are two distinct dimensions of scientific study then, transpersonal and cognitive psychology. Now, 3Q Workplace is one of the programs you're going to be trained to deliver. This is for the entry-level corporate program. It's for employees in a company and junior managers. And what we train them in 3Q Workplace is in the 10 core work skills, along the lines of what we looked at earlier, those 10 skills. Management skills training is the next level up. This is for managers, how you apply 3Q to management. And 3Q leadership is for the executives, how you apply 3Q to leadership. But these both of these second courses, you'll be trained to deliver once you're a senior practitioner. As an entry-level practitioner, you'll be trained to deliver workplace. And in terms of the method relative to corporate training, there are different dimensions of how 3Q works. We'll go into that in detail when we get to the actual program in semester 2. So the basic orientation of the workplace program is creating high-performing people through using their 3Q abilities, which of course then results in a high-performing organization. So the way we sell the 3Q training to organizations is to talk about improving performance, but of course it also improves other aspects of corporate functioning. Then they can be summarized in this way: boosting IQ and EQ, productivity growth, job satisfaction, and social responsibility. So these are the different aspects of the benefits of 3Q in an organization. But as I say, we'll come on to that more in semester 2, after we've spent a whole semester just developing our ability to use 3Q. So let's have a quick summary of what 3Q is and how we actually experience it. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with this because you've probably seen the video, but anyway, we're going to go through it again. And of course, what I want you to do is pay attention to how I introduce the exercise to experience spiritual intelligence, because of course you're training to deliver this yourself, and so therefore it'd be useful for you to, right from the start, to notice the different elements that come into this exercise that we're about to do. So as you know, this symbol stands for the 3 different dimensions of intelligence: IQ, EQ, and SQ. And that symbol opens out into the twin poles of attention: subject pole of attention, feeling awareness itself, and the object pole of attention, states of body and mind. So let's quickly have a look at each of these poles of attention. So the object pole basically is made up of everything we're aware of: perceptions, thoughts, emotions, memories, beliefs, and self-image. So objects of attention are products of IQ and EQ, right? Your IQ and EQ is what creates your objects of attention. Thoughts and emotions, perceptions are all products of IQ and EQ, right? And they're also states of body and mind. So objects of attention are states of body and mind and products of IQ and EQ. Now, when you identify with objects of attention, that's called being the ego. That means you're identified with your body and mind, with being your body and mind, and with the contents of your mind. Now, the results of being the ego are rather regrettable because you're all the time seeking satisfaction. You never actually get there, you know. Ego never actually gets the satisfaction. It's always making the project for how to get satisfied in the next moment or the one after that. So using this moment as a means to the next. And therefore, obviously, the ego is discontented and therefore reacts to things and not responds. Reacting means coming from the past, projecting the past on the present. Responding means coming from the present, living from the present moment in touch with the present reality, which of course is only found at the subject pole of attention. So the ego is basically pretty messed up and doesn't have a very great time. The ego feels best when it's planning things. It doesn't actually get to the fulfillment of its plans, though. It just makes more plans. So it's forever arriving and never getting there. Now let's have a look at the other pole of attention, the subject pole of attention. Feeling awareness itself. The qualities of feeling awareness itself are wisdom, compassion, integrity, joy, love, creativity, and peace. So these qualities inherently belong to feeling awareness itself, and you can feel these qualities whenever you identify with simply being feeling awareness itself. And this is called being the soul. So the results of being the soul: not seeking, already happy, and therefore not using this moment as a means to the next. Responding, not reacting. So responding means coming from the soul with the qualities of the soul. Reacting means coming from the ego with the qualities of the ego. And all this amounts to spiritual intelligence. So these are the two poles of attention then, ego and soul. And this diagram represents the basic operating system of human awareness. Now, no one told us that we had a basic operating system. They told us about the basic operating system of our computer and of our mobile phone. But no one actually told us, well, your own awareness has an operating system. But this is in fact the case. This is the operating system of everyone's awareness. In the absence of transcendental intelligence, that is, those who have developed a very high level of spiritual realization even go beyond this basic operating system, and they can connect with a state that's prior to this. But that's a very advanced state of realization, and we're looking at the basic operating system here, not the advanced operating system. So the basic operating system is this, the twin poles of attention, and everyone can verify this in their own experience just by noticing that there's what they're aware of, and then at the other pole there is awareness itself. Now the whole key then to accessing your spiritual intelligence is how you go from being the ego to being the soul. How do you go from one pole of attention to the other? And that, of course, is a question of going through this mechanism of attention. So we have to find the route, we have to find the pathway from one pole of this mechanism to the other pole. And the way we do that, of course, is through these three steps: notice, feel, be. So we're going to take a moment now to go through these three steps and just spend a bit of time on each one so that you know exactly what to do to experience your spiritual intelligence. And this basic method is called the 3Q portal. So step one, notice. Notice what? Notice the subject of attention. How do you do that? Notice attention has two poles, what you're aware of, and awareness itself at the subject pole. So step one is very simple, just uses your IQ. Step two, feel. Feel what? feel the qualities of feeling awareness itself. How do you do that? Be aware at the still points of the breath cycle. Now, this is an exercise that we're going to do now. It just takes 2 or 3 minutes, very quick. So just take a moment now to close your eyes. I'm assuming that you're not operating dangerous machinery at the moment, such as driving a car. So if it's safe to do so, please close your eyes at this point and bring your attention to your breathing. If you need to keep your eyes open for some reason, you can still do this exercise with your eyes open. So just follow along and with your attention on your breathing. And notice that at the end of the in-breath, there's a slight pause when you're neither breathing in or breathing out. And then at the end of the out-breath, there's another pause when you're neither breathing in or breathing out. So now experience what it's like in those still points. So how does it feel for you when you experience yourself in those still points, when you're neither breathing in or breathing out? Marcia, what would you say? You can just type something if you like, or you can try using your microphone. How does it feel for you, Marcia, in those still points? Were you able to feel anything at all? I'll just wait a moment till Marcia can get back to us. I'm going to unmute your microphone, Marcia. No, I can't hear you yet. Just try speaking again, Marcia.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now, Marcio. Yeah. Were you able to do that exercise? What would it feel like for
Yes,
you?
I did.
Yeah?
Yeah, I did. Yes, I felt as though I have a rhythm.
You felt as though what?
I have a rhythm.
You have a reason?
A rhythm.
A
Just
rhythm?
like a sound beating, at the end points.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's like a rhythm. And
Yes.
how else did it feel for you? How else did it feel for you?
Well, I felt something that I couldn't feel before, that these points really exist. It is something different.
Oh,
Now I
okay.
have them in my consciousness.
Okay. Right. Well, so that's good. So let's just continue now, and I'll come back to you again in a moment, Marcia.
All right.
So we're just going to do this exercise again now. This step 2. We're just going to feel a little bit further into it. So again, bring your attention to your breathing. And notice at the end of that in-breath, there's that slight pause when you're neither breathing in or breathing out. So we're just going to focus on that first pause at the end of the in-breath. And now what I want you to do is breathe in a bit more deeply than normal. Just breathe in a bit more deeply and notice how it feels in that pause. So you don't have to breathe in any special way. Just breathe in normally, allow the pause to be there, and then breathe out when it's natural to breathe out. So you don't have to force anything, it's just a natural breathing. But as you breathe, if you breathe in a bit more deeply than normal, you'll find that pause elongates itself. So just notice how it feels in that pause. So Marcio, let me come back to you again now. How did it feel for you in that pause, Marcio, this time?
It was a bit different. I felt as though it is a point of making a choice of breathing, which was something that there wasn't there before.
Okay. So let's just go through it again. So I'm just going to mute your microphone, Marcio. So just bring your attention to your breathing again. Just follow that breath as it comes in. Now notice what happens to your thinking mind when you're not breathing in or breathing out. Just notice what happens to your thinking mind. So just try it again. So Marcia, I'm going to ask you, what happened? Did you notice what happened to your thinking mind in that still point when you weren't breathing?
It seems to me that you keep focus on the point and you don't think of anything else.
Exactly. Exactly, Marcio. You don't think of anything else. Now, what I want you to do now is to feel what feelings you have when you're not thinking of anything else, all right? So we're just going to do it again now. So bring your attention to your breathing. Notice that still point at the end of the in-breath. And how do you feel in that still point when you're not thinking? So Marcia, how would you say you feel in that still point?
I would say it is a point of potential.
A point of potential. Now that sounds like a point of potential. That I'm sure is true. However, that's a thought. How does it actually feel, right?
All right, empty.
Yeah?
Empty. I felt empty.
You felt empty? Okay. And what emotional quality does that have for you? What feeling quality does empty have for you?
It was something like impartiality or peace, something like that.
Did you say peace?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, that's it. So in other words, you start to feel a peaceful quality in those still points, right?
Yes.
Yes. Good, Marcia.
It's not good nor even bad.
Yeah, it's not good or bad, exactly. It just feels like peace, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, I know that Eve, you already experienced this because we have done courses before. So we're just going to do this step once more, and then we're going to go on to step 3. So just bring your attention to your breathing. We're still doing step 2. So feel how it feels at the end of the in-breath there when you're not breathing in or breathing out. And then at the end of the out-breath, again, there's that point of not breathing in or not breathing out. Now, when you feel that peacefulness there in those points, then it's time to move on to step 3. Step 3 is be that peaceful feeling, breathing in and out at the subject pole of attention. So now let your eyes open, have a look around the room. Notice that you are now being awareness itself. You're not being the body and mind right now. You're aware of your body and mind. You're aware of your thoughts, you're aware of your emotions, but you're not actually being your body and mind. Your body and mind is an object to you right now. Your thoughts are objects to you, right? You're simply being awareness itself. You're being the space within which all your thoughts arise. Now notice that you can maintain your position here at the subject pole just by relaxing into being awareness itself. It's actually a pleasurable position to be in. Now notice that you can maintain your position here at the subject pole just by feeling present as awareness itself. You don't have to make any stress, you don't have to try to be awareness, you can just be awareness itself. Because this is your natural state anyway. This is not some created position, this is your native state of being awareness itself. You're always awareness itself, regardless of what arises. So in step 3, you're simply being what you always are, but sometimes you forget. Sometimes you identify with the body, you identify with thoughts and so on. But you actually always are awareness itself. Now, Marcio, let me ask you, were you able to feel, were you able to be awareness itself? Were you able to do step 3, simply being awareness itself? Marcio?
Yes, I guess so, because I've been trying this meditation exercises as well, and I felt as though I was doing something like that.
Yeah, that's
something very similar.
That's exactly right. Good, Marcia. Now, so what this represents is the 3 steps of the 3Q portal. Now, when meditation works because you have done these 3 steps without necessarily thinking about these steps. But meditation techniques work because you go from being the object, the ego, to being the soul, the subject, consciousness itself. That's why meditation works when it works. So these 3 steps then are simply the active ingredients in any form of meditation. Now, I need to add a qualification here. There are advanced forms of meditation which go beyond this, called TQ, transcendental forms of meditation, which we'll look at later. So this, I'm just talking about, mainstream forms of meditation here. This is the basic structure of all forms of mainstream meditation. So what we're doing then with spiritual intelligence is we are using the brain's capability for activation, for all-pervading activation, called whole brain activation. And that's when the hemispheres are synchronized and the whole brain is basically transmitting the same frequency. 40 hertz is often mentioned as the frequency, but there are other frequencies too, which represent this whole brain activation. And this, when you get the whole brain activation and the hemispheric synchronization, you also get the qualities and capabilities of spiritual intelligence. So basically, the state of presence, which is what you attain at the subject pole, has these qualities of whole brain activation, hemispheric synchronization, and the qualities and capabilities of spiritual intelligence. That's all one state. And we've now got the neuroscientific evidence to prove that the state of subjective presence coincides with whole brain activation and hemispheric synchronization. And by practicing the 3 steps, you actually do develop a brain called the 3Q brain, which is easily able to stay at the subject pole of attention in association with any activities whatsoever. And so that's what we're developing through the practice of 3Q. our ability to stay at the subject pole of attention in association with all sorts of experiences, and therefore being able to use the qualities of the soul, spiritual intelligence, in association with any activity. Yeah. And then what happens is that your body and mind becomes a vehicle for the soul rather than a vehicle for the ego. Yeah. So while you're identified with the object pole of attention, with objects of attention, then your body and mind is channeling ego energies. But when you're identified with the soul, with the subject pole of attention, with awareness itself, then your body and mind channels soul energies. So it all depends where we identify as to whether our body and mind is an expression of the ego or an expression of the soul. Now, as you all know, neuroplasticity plays a big part in developing any skill because, as scientists have discovered, the brain develops according to how you use it. And therefore, you develop abilities according to how you actually use your intelligence. Now, an example that's often used is the taxi driver. The taxi driver they've done research on the brain of a taxi driver, and they've discovered that the part that governs direction finding is enlarged in taxi drivers compared to people that don't spend their day finding directions. The same applies to the violin player. The hand on the strings, which does a lot more work, the part of the brain that governs that hand is much more developed than the part of the brain that governs the other hand on the bow, which does very little work. So again, clearly showing that the brain develops according to how you use it. Now, Marcia is asking a question, why is immortality not listed as a quality of the soul? Well, the reason, Marcia, is that immortality certainly is a quality of the soul. However, that is only evident to you when you have actually transcended the soul state, when you've actually got to the TQ position. Because when you first develop spiritual intelligence, it's not obvious to you that in fact your soul is immortal. That's more of a belief when you first begin to practice spiritual intelligence. It only becomes evident to you that the soul is in fact immortal when you transcend the connection to the object pole altogether. Now that doesn't happen immediately when you first learn SQ. It happens ultimately on the transition between SQ and TQ. You go through a stage of experiencing awareness that exists in its own right, devoid of any reference to objects, to objective states of awareness. And only then do you realize for sure that, oh, okay, the soul is immortal, consciousness is immortal. Prior to that, it's just a belief that consciousness or that the soul is immortal. But you get there by practicing. You awaken to the fact of the soul's immortality eventually. But you don't necessarily experience that at the beginning when you first begin to practice your spiritual intelligence. In other words, you can be the soul, but that doesn't necessarily show you that it's immortal because you haven't got to that level of depth of experience yet through practice. So that's why when we talk about the soul and spiritual intelligence, we don't use the word immortal, because you're not going to be able to validate that in your own experience for sure until you've had some time to practice, and then it becomes evident it's immortal. But we don't want to impose any beliefs on anybody, and that's why we never say to people believe this or believe that. No. And that's why we don't mention immortality, because it would be a belief system for people initially. Okay. So, yeah, good, Marcia. You see, that's an important thing. What we're presenting to people is only what they can prove in their own experience and what science has proven using peer-reviewed studies. We don't involve any beliefs in this, because if you encourage people to believe things, basically you're proposing a religion. And we don't want to be a religion. We want to be an empirical, science-based methodology for you to access the higher dimensions of your own intelligence. So therefore, we don't want to get beliefs involved in this at all. And there's no need to either. We don't need to involve beliefs, fortunately. Yeah, so neuroplasticity then clearly also relates to spiritual intelligence because it's about evolving a brain that's capable of easily using spiritual intelligence in association with any activity or with any experience. And that means evolving your brain to the point where you easily can do those 3 steps and easily maintain your position at the subject pole. Now, when you get expert at using the 3 steps, you'll find that you don't need to keep using them. It's a bit like that. Once you've learned the method, you've learned how to traverse this territory now, and you can get to the subject pole without having to think about the 3 steps. You can just immediately get there. You can just immediately be awareness itself and immediately be plugged into your feeling state. But the reason we use the 3 steps is that we want to train your brain in each of those steps first, so that then after you've trained in those steps, you can easily get to the destination even without having to think about it. But first you have to develop the habit, develop the pathway, develop the brain pathway, which is what we're doing by practicing the 3 steps. So these 3 steps, notice, feel, be, are the thing to learn at this stage. This is the thing to be doing throughout the day. So I recommend that what you do actually is that you make a decision about how you are going to build these 3 steps into your day. Now, some people like to have a reminder of when they can, of when to practice the 3 steps. For example, you can get an app on your phone which will give you reminders. There's one's called GPS for the Soul. That'll give you reminders. GPS for the Soul. I think they have an iPhone version of that and a Android version. There's other apps which can give you reminders. Also, you'll probably find that most phones have their own alarm app. So you can set an alarm for yourself. You might say, well, how often? How often should you be reminded to practice SQ? Well, as a ballpark figure, I would recommend that you go for something like every hour. I mean, why not start strong? You could say, oh, I'll remember to do it once a day. Well, once a day is okay to begin with. But if you really want to make progress here, you should be thinking of doing this once every hour, because it only takes a few moments, but by putting yourself through these 3 steps, what you're doing is you're building a brain pathway which will get stronger and stronger as the time goes by. And this brain pathway will then generalize so that you'll be able to use this pathway even when you're not thinking about the steps. So think of it this way. It's a bit like you're building a channel by doing these 3 steps frequently. And then once you've built that channel, your attention will quite naturally flow down that channel, even without you having to direct it in that way. It'll just naturally flow to the subject pole of attention. So I recommend you find a way of reminding yourself to practice these 3 steps once an hour. And it only has to take you a minute. When you're really good at this, in fact, you can take less than a minute, but it will be good to develop a habit of every hour just going through these 3 steps. And you'll notice that you can perform these steps while you're doing any activity. Initially, you'll find it best to do the steps on your own with no distractions. But very soon, once you've got the hang of it, you'll be able to do these steps while walking down the street, and ultimately, even while talking to somebody. You can still be in that subject pole position while having a conversation. I mean, I'm being awareness itself now, even though I'm talking. So, in other words, you can think and talk and still be awareness itself, because being awareness itself does not require thinking. Sure, to do the 3 steps, you have to think, because each step has to be thought about to perform it. But once you've got to the subject pole, you can maintain yourself at the subject pole without thinking, simply by a process of feeling present as awareness itself. while you put your attention on other matters. So I'm feeling present as awareness itself right now, even though I'm talking. So I'm being the field of awareness, even though this body is chatting about this and that, doesn't distract from the fact that I'm the field of awareness. I don't have to become the thinking mind in order to speak. I'm still being awareness now, even though I'm speaking. Yeah? In other words, thinking does not conflict with spiritual intelligence. You know how many people say, oh, I can't meditate, I can't stop thinking, you know? Big deal. You can still think and use your spiritual intelligence. There's no contradiction. So once you've established at the subject pole, you can think all you like, and you can still be present as awareness itself. Now, once you go off into the thinking and get sucked into the thinking, then you could easily lose your position at the subject pole. And then you've gone back to being the ego again, identified with your thinking mind. So when you notice you've done that, you have to come back to the subject pole. That means doing the 3 steps again, getting back to being awareness itself, being the field of awareness, and then you can continue to think while being awareness itself. You'll notice that while you're being awareness itself, you'll notice that unnecessary thinking falls away. You know, unnecessary thinking falls away when you're being awareness itself. You'll find a lot of unnecessary thinking just stops because it's just nonsense. It's just noise in the system. So you get a lot more peacefulness and calm when you're being the subject pole. Okay, well, we'll need to finish there for today. So thank you for attending. Apologies about the false start today. There was a technical problem. We had to restart the platform. So tomorrow we'll meet again at the same time. And till then, I hope you practice your 3Q portal a few times. And we'll meet again at the same time tomorrow. So bye-bye for now.